Hello everyone, welcome back to Game Brigade. My name is Brian, and today we're going to be diving into my first impressions look of Cities of Venus by Tin Robot Games. This is a 2 to 4 player light to medium weight Euro tableau building city builder game, which is going to be on Kickstarter on May 2nd, as far as I'm aware. I'm going to be giving you my first impressions look of this game. Effectively, what I like to do in these first impression preview games is give you several mechanics that I've seen in this game and my thoughts on them. That way you have a better understanding of the game so you can make the best backing decision going forward. If that sounds interesting to you, please watch this video. If you'd like to support the channel, remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Let's hit it. Okay, Cities of Venus. So as I mentioned, this is a 2 to 4 player game right now in terms of what I played. I do believe they're going to have a expansion available in the Kickstarter to raise that player count if that's something you are interested in for your player group. My experience for this game is going to be rooted in that 2 to 4 player experience. I don't have any knowledge in terms of what it's like at a higher player count. So what are we looking for in this game? What is this game? Well, we are going to be effectively building up our city here on Venus, utilizing drops that are coming from Earth to build up our city to be more effective and to house our people and basically do things better as the round comes on. But there's going to be a certain time where Earth no longer is going to be sending us drops, and we should be sufficiently sufficient. We should be sufficient enough in our establishment here to survive, and the player with the most victory points will be the winner of the Republic of Venus. So that's the very high level idea of what we're doing. But how does the game work? What are we doing in this game? Well, there's going to be a series of different types of steps that we're going to be taking. There's going to be 6 total, going from events to drops to our actions on the board. And we're going to go through those individually so you have a good idea of what we're talking about. And then I'll dive into some of those more individual things to give you my thoughts and how I experienced them while we were playing. So the first thing is kind of one of the more important ones. It's called the drop. And I've already kind of established this here, but effectively what happens is you're going to have a deck of cards. Now these cards have a number on the back indicating the round that we're still effectively in. And you're going to place 5 of these out from your deck here. Now this is a 20 card set. Now these cards, it looks it's pretty deep. There are 3 total rounds or levels, I guess you could say, with 1, 2, and 3. Progressively, your items and your available things will get better as you progress through the stack. And in the 3rd stack, somewhere is going to be the Earth card, which will indicate the end of the game. So what are these cards? What are we looking at? Well, there are 2 types of cards that are on the drop. They can either supply us with more V-Naughts, the Venus astronauts that we're using to populate our boards and to pay for our things, or they can be strict upgrades to our location. They're pretty easy to tell. If it's got a pink little astronaut V-Naught guy in the corner, that is a population boost. That's going to place more V-Naughts into a specific location. These are tied, though, to a specific corridor of your city. Let's take a look at our city board right now. You'll see that there's different sections, and this is a multi-layered player board, so you'll have sections where you can actually slide these cards into them once you purchase those upgrades. Up here at the top, we have our food. This is what's going to be feeding our people. Below that, we have our air and water purification systems. This is what's keeping everyone healthy and living through our trip through Venus here. To our left here is the power station. This is, of course, how we supply the power. To the right is the mechanic station. Down here is the shields. Venus is not as nice as Earth is in terms of the habitability, so we actually have to have a shield that protects our city. So these shields are what are keeping our V-Naughts alive. In the middle is our general mineral storage. Mineral is a resources that we can use to purchase different types of items. And next we have our mining station, where we are going to send miners out to collect more minerals because Venus is filled with an untapped resource. At the very bottom is our holding bay. It's basically a storage bay, but we could eventually upgrade that at some point to be a little bit more efficient for us and work for us rather than against us. So if we look here, we have these drop cards as I was talking about, and we have that pink V-Knot. Now, based on the icon in the top left corner of that card, will tell you where those V-Knots are going to be deployed to. So if I were to purchase this one right here, I would be getting 4 V-Knots, and they'd be going straight into my mining supply. But there is a cost. There's a cost to purchase these cards, and that's what you have to pay when you're deciding to buy any of these drops. Now, you don't buy them right now. We'll talk about that purchase here shortly, but that is a cost that you're going to have to purchase. The cost is on the far right tableau side here. So you can see there's a cost of either V-Knots from a specific region or a mineral cost. It can be either or. So the minerals are always going to be on the bottom of the tableau side here, while the other portions will be on the top side. And if it's a hybrid, you'll see that they are split. So let's take a look at this one here. This would require 2 from our mechanical and 2 generic minerals to purchase that. The nice thing about this game is that it is completely language independent, other than, say, the round ordering system here. But if you know that, and it's easy to translate that. Otherwise, the entire game is purely played off the iconography of the system. And once you learn the iconography, which usually takes about 1 full round, you are going to be good to go. The hardest thing is learning what some of the upgrades to your cities can do. But luckily, the rule book has a good appendix in the back, which basically tells you what they are if you have any specific questions. So the drop occurs. We would look and see what they are, but this is just more of letting us know what's going to happen for the future turns as we go through the turns, making our decisions. The next thing is going to be resolving events. We're going to look at our drop, and if any of these triangle cards are appearing on our drop, we are then going to draw the top event cards. Event cards are things that are occurring during this round that are either positive or negative effects to our V-Knot crew here on Venus. So let's take a look what the top card says. Oh, we were so lucky. We're getting a +2 V-Knot supply source. So we'll go over here to our spaceship, take 2 V-Knots, and I'm going to place my V-Knots over here in my mining facility. That's great. I just received more V-Knots. In fact, I'm actually going to be smarter about that. I'm going to actually place them in my food and water, and I will tell you why I did that here very shortly. That's a smarter play. Brian's using his big brain here. The next thing is the drop shields event. You know, as I mentioned earlier, Venus is rough. So we have to drop our shields, and the only way that occurs is we have to send a V-Knot out to repair the shields that have been damaged, which is going to kill one of our V-Knots. If our shields do not have a V-Knot for us to remove during the drop shields phase, you're going to have to remove 2 from any other section in your facility. That's pretty rough, I will say. So be aware of that. You must always make sure your shields are manned or have some sort of upgrade that prevents those shields from degrading. The next thing is the grow, pop, and deploy. And that's the reason why I wanted to show you that I put 1 in each, the food and the water. See, you will take the lowest number of either one of these, and that is the population that you're going to be getting for this specific round. You start the game with 4 in food and 4 in water. So you would be getting 4 V-Knots for the round. But since I received 2 V-Knots for free by placing 1 in each, I'm actually going to get 5. So I come over to my supply here, collect my 5 V-Knots, and I place these around the board. Now, this is the point where you can look at the drop and take a look at what type of resources are you going to need. Are you going to need minerals? Are you going to need food and water? Things like that. But there are restrictions to your placements. You see, every facility has a maximum amount of people or V-Knots that can be housed in that facility unless it's upgraded. And that's the other card on the drop that we didn't talk about. We talked about the V-Knot, the drop cards that give you people, but the other card is ones that would increase the count of V-Knots in a facility. So right now this drop only has 1, and it is for our mining facility, and you effectively will slide this card into the slot like this, which will then show a new number, a 7, representing that I can now have 7 V-Knots in this instead of the default 6. Alternatively, there's also an indicator on this card that there is a victory point attached to it. This victory point is a point for end game scoring, because remember, we're trying to get the most points at the end of the game. So that would be an important upgrade for me to grab. But we don't purchase it just yet. So I got to place my VNaughts. If I'm going to look to purchase this up, I would have to have at least a guy in my mining. We need a guy in my power. I'm going to put one more in my food and one more in my air, because I want to get more VNaughts next time. And I'm going to need some minerals potentially to buy that. So I'm going to put one in my mining facility. The next thing we can do are city actions, but I want to talk one more time about the deploy phase before we go on. The deploy phase is important because it's what you fill out your board with and place in your VNaughts. But we also have this card that I'm reading off the available actions to in terms of our step resolution. This is also a secondary location where you can send your VNaughts. It is the ISS station, and it can hold up to 8 VNaughts, and I'm allowed to place 2 there for every deployment. A deployment can happen in multiple ways. If I receive cards that are independent from a location, so like this one is independent, I can deploy them to the astronaut to this section. Or when I receive my VNaughts from this deployment, from the standard deployment, I could place 2 there as well. Once I have 8 of these VNaughts, I can remove them and take one of these innovation cards. These are a limited supply, so there's only so many you can have in the player games, but they will be upgrading your facilities the same as these drops, but they're going to have a little bit more powerful effects, but also limiting sometimes the amount of VNaughts you can have in those facilities. So I just wanted to touch on that before we go down to the city actions. So the city actions is basically the part that is the it's actually probably still simultaneous. Most of this game is simultaneous play. I wasn't say it's not simultaneous, but it's still pretty simultaneous. The city actions was where you can activate your city if you have any available actions on your city portions that you can do, or go mining. To mine costs them 1 VNaught, so we'll put them back. We roll our dice, and I rolled a 2. So that means I can collect 2 minerals from the supply and place it in my mineral storage. Now you'll notice I had to remove a VNaught. Venus is dangerous. Everything that we need to do that costs is a positive effect is going to be harmful, and that's why we had to lose our miner. But in return, we received 2 minerals. Other things we could do is trading VNaughts or trading minerals in for a VNaught if we wanted to buy one, etc. The list of available city actions is in the rulebook. There's only 3 of them. So after that, we will then go into the drop. We're going to purchase one of these items. Now we have 2 options. If we cannot afford a cost, but it's something that we want for the future, we could select it and place it into our storage bay, which means in the city action phase, the next round, if we can afford the cost, then we can then play it on our step 5. Alternatively, we would just purchase a card paying for the cost. So we were looking at this one to upgrade our facility. So I would pay 1 from our power, 1 from our mechanical, and the 2 crystals that we so happen to roll. Take this card, sliding it directly into the upgrade slot. Now my engineering facility has a buff in terms of the amount of VNaughts I could potentially place there, and has a victory point. At the end of the round, just like that, we will burn the drop and continue with a new drop, revealing the next 5 cards. And if an event occurs, which we finally drew one, drawing the event, resolving the effect, etc. Now, the only thing that changes in terms of the gameplay here is as we get down further into the deck, eventually we're going to get to the round 2, which means if we have 2 of these event cards show up, we will now resolve 2 instead of 1. And alternatively, if we see the 3 event cards show up, 3 events could be played out. This game will continue until the Earth card is drawn. At that point, that'll be the final round. You'll finish that final round and we'll go to endpoint scoring, which is effectively a combination of your victory points on your cards and the amount of VNaughts you have on your board. So you are incentivized to have as many VNaughts as you possibly can. That is the game, that in the rough of it, in terms of what you're going to be doing. Very simple, very easy to learn. Let's talk now about the individual mechanics of this game that I liked and didn't like, so you guys can have a better impression when you're making your decisions. So the first thing I want to talk about is the primary mechanic that's kind of the interaction piece of this game. Because unlike, most Euros have different types of interaction between the players. In this game, the most interaction you're going to get is within the drop. It's the port where you're going to have a limited available supplies as people in turn order start taking things away, limiting the amount of cards that you have available to you when it comes to your turn. I enjoy that type of mechanic and I enjoy that type of a puzzle, but I do think it favors, obviously, first player and turn orders and whatnot, so be aware of that. But what I wanted to talk about was within this aspect, you have the Earth card here as well as the events. Now, in my example, I didn't set the event cards up in any way. I just shuffled them and drew the top one. Luckily, this was one of the few times that the event was actually a positive one. It's very rare that they're positive. They're most likely going to be negative. For example, the one that I drew for the round 2 that we didn't read said radiation leak, no population growth this round. That's pretty brutal. So even though I had 6 here now in my food and water, planning to gain 6 V-Naughts, I'm not going to gain any. But I am still going to lose my shield V-Naught, and then any type of purchasing that I decide to do, I'm going to have to lose more V-Naughts for that as well. And because of my decision making here without having more miners, I'm not going to be able to do a mining action. So it's kind of a cascading effect. And it is part of the puzzle that this game is trying to offer you. You have to figure out what is the best situation. Do I go greedy like I kind of did here, going for the food and water? Or do I hedge my bets and make sure that I've got at least something everywhere in case we have some sort of issue? That is an interesting puzzle. I just wish at times that there was a little bit more variety here in the available drops in terms of what some of the things do. The first round, majority of the stuff is either going to be a buff to the room count in terms of increasing the amount of available V-Naughts you can hold from 6 to 7, or giving you a buff to your mining facility for the most part. That's usually what we saw round 1. As they get deeper into the drops, they get a little bit more involved. But I still would say I wanted a little bit more variety in terms of available things that we could eventually try to do as we're building out our tableau. The other thing I want to talk about is the events. Now, like I said, the events were completely randomly shuffled, and there are some positive, there are some negative. But in the games that we played, some of the events were super brutal, causing us to have a lot of issues. Now, we still got through things, and we still got it. But for example, we had one that killed 2 of our V-Naughts in our shields, and then we had to go to the shields event section. Because we didn't have any more shields, we had to lose 2 more somewhere else. So it was pretty bad. And then I think we also had like a radiation leak or something, so we couldn't grow anyone. So it was like, man, that was a massive loss for us, where everyone lost like 6 or 7 V-Naughts in one go. Now, my point with that is, though, it might be interesting to see to have seen some sort of scaling with the event cards, having these are level 1 cards, level 2 cards, level 3 cards. That you can play out, which will go in line with the time deck, because this is a stack deck. You know how many are going to be available, and since you're pulling only one event in the 20 cards here, you could time it where you're going to be seeing level 1 cards, level 2 cards, level 3 cards with an increased penalty for those levels, which means for the level 3 ones, you could have some really interesting bad things hitting you, because your facility should be getting to the point where you can recover or mitigate some of that damage. I think that'd be kind of cool to see. I still liked the way this played out in terms of the overall experience with the event cards. It was a very fun way to mitigate and figure out the puzzle. I just thought it'd be interesting to have it, because it's all just shuffled, everything's just kind of randomized, to have it maybe more scaling and effective in that way. The other thing I want to talk about was the Earth card coming out. The Earth card, the way it's placed is you take the third deck, the final stack of cards, you remove the top card from that stack, and you place the Earth card on it. You then shuffle that deck completely. So that means the Earth card will be randomly distributed somewhere in pile 3. This is fine, But I did have experiences where we had games where this was the first card revealed on level 3, so we never really got to experience some of that level 3 stuff, some of those items and experiences that you could see at that higher level. Maybe what I'd like to have seen is you take the 3rd level deck and maybe split it up into 3 piles, placing it into one of them, and then shuffling a 2/3 pile, putting it somewhere in the bottom 2/3. That way you at least have at least one full go of level 3 prior to getting to the potential ending of the game with that Earth card. So the city actions are down here. We're mostly going to be focusing on our board down here. And I mentioned there was 3, what am I doing here with my 3? 3 different city actions that you can use to perform that you've kind of collected with your things. First is the canister. So if we had one in our canister down here that we collected from a previous round, we can now play it, which is great if you want to have a powerful round or if you kind of plan for something going forward. It's super, super great that that's an option. The next one is the mining. As I mentioned earlier, you remove a V0, roll, and you get whatever. Oh, great, that was pretty good. 5. You collect the minerals for that roll. This can be modified based on the modification cards you've taken. So, for example, I can get a +1 to whatever minerals I would have rolled. So this would have given me instead, what am I doing here? 6. That black one is completely gone, lost forever. If I had this in here, I'm not going to slide it in right now, but lost it forever. There we go. If I had this upgrade, which gives me a +1 to my mine, that would have done that. The final thing is to purchasing more V0s, spending your minerals to get a V0. So 4-to-1 conversion right there, where I could then spend this for, if I wanted to select it on a V0 for whatever reason, and place them in a location. The V0s are obviously the victory point scoring here. So, and you can only do one of these actions. You can do all of them, but only once. So be aware of that as well. So those are the 3 things you can do. Of course, you can only do those specific things one time. You can do all 3 of them, but you can only do them one time. So overall, what did I think about this specific section? I think it really comes down to, and I talk about this with managing, I also want to mention not just the city events, but also managing the overall encompassment of your facility. At first, it looks like there's not a lot of things you can do. It is limited. You can basically roll to get your minerals, and then if you have any other upgrades, you can do those things. Otherwise, it's pretty much done. But the fact that you have to really consider that there's a specific puzzle you're looking for in this game, and we're going to talk about that with my final point, but I want to kind of talk about it a little bit here as well, is management of your V0s within the facility as you plan around different types of events occurring, and also the drop and things you have to purchase. Making sure you're selecting people from the right sections to get the right deployments, because obviously you don't want to reduce here because it will then reduce the amount you get in future turns. So there's an interesting little balancing act. I almost looked at it like a pendulum in some way. So let's finalize and just give you my overall impression of this puzzle of Cities of Venus. Cities of Venus is a light to medium weight Euro game. And I place it light for myself, although I have seen a few people we played with mention it was a little bit on the medium side. I wanted to place it somewhere in that range of like a 2.5 for me, because overall the things that you're trying to do mechanically aren't very difficult. It's, purchasing cards, placing them in your facility, but the puzzle really comes from the management. How do you manage your facility, dealing with the events that are going to start cascading and getting much more difficult? So, for example, this one again would give us 2 V0s, which is great, but depending on our phase that we're in, we would have to lose a guy from a specific facility. So you are constantly having to be reactive to this game. It is a very reactive-based game as you try to also get innovations up here with your space station, and then figuring out a way to purchase these ever increasingly costing upgrades to your facility. In fact, let's kind of look at some of the level 3 upgrades instead of these level 1s, so we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. Here we go. Let's do something like this. Let's get some different kind of cards out. Here we go. Okay, so this can give you an example of kind of the puzzle you're dealing with. Some of the cards might have higher victory counts. So this upgrade to your mining facility no longer allows me to even put people into my mining facility. And it costs 2 minerals to purchase. So this would be my final go. And effectively what it does is I would actually remove the card I slid in here, overriding it with this new one, and I'm basically just purchasing myself a victory point. But if the game keeps going, if we're still going, I am no longer going to have the ability to purchase anything that has minerals unless I have some sort of stockpile for it. So that's part of that pendulum figuring out where you're like, okay, where is the positive? What am I looking for? The other aspect is knowing when do you buy VNOTs. You're always going to try to have to get an injection of new troops to your supply because you're going to get low as some of these events wear down on you. So this is kind of the interesting puzzle. So that is it. That is basically Cities of Venus and how you're going to play it in a quick rundown. I've really enjoyed the mitigation puzzle that this game offers. If you have any questions regarding this, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to answer any questions for you. But that's it. I'm going to leave it with that one. This is Brian from Game Brigade. Talk to you very soon.